Good evening, everybody. Today, this tutorial, we're going to be dealing with assembling parts created in Creo. This video is gonna be a two-part video. Within the one video, it's gonna be two parts. You could skip ahead if you want, if you already know. But in your course, a professor, when teaching you this chapter, he might supply you with parts already modeled. um, he might give you some parts and to assemble them using the assembly feature. So I'm going to show you, in case you don't know how to get the parts and you're stuck in extracting those parts. I'm going to show you how to set up your environment, how to set up everything to get started with putting parts together. Okay, so if you know this part of the video, you could go on ahead and skip it. So we're going to try to assemble this feature here, the assembly of a pedestal bearing. Okay, but first thing that we should do, if you go to your browser, you go to your school, in my case NJIT. You go to your NJIT Moodle and download the supplied, um, go here, download your supplied parts in your NJIT course, and I already did and downloaded. In this case, I already have a program that helps me extract files. Sometimes zip file, the zip program in Windows does not work, so you have to download a third-party software. Right here I'm using WinRAR. So what you do is you Google WinRAR. Wrote it wrong. Go here, download the. Usually now computers are 64-bit. You could download the 64-bit. Once you download it, save it, install it. It's a straightforward process. Once you get that done, these files that are actually compressed files will be able to open using WinRAR. So we're gonna do the pedestal. So first and foremost, you go on ahead and extract the file, just like that, right? Once you get that done, what I did is I created a folder in my desktop, right? And I extracted both folders into this specific folder. There's a reason why I did that, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. So right now, both files from my WinRAR, I extracted both of them into this folder, which is a Chapter 10 homework, okay? We go on ahead and we clicked open up your Creo program. Right here, I already did the software, I already did the work. What you're gonna do, I'm gonna make sure I save this. I'm gonna close it. Okay. Again, if you already know this part, you could go on ahead and skip. I'm just showing people or students that do not know that much about extracting files from a compressed folder. Okay. So the reason why I closed it, because you first have to select the working directory for all your parts could work. Okay, so no. So after we get that done, right, we're gonna click select working directory. Remember this folder that I just created, or you will create. Go to desktop, click on the folder, and click where all your parts are going to be. So first and foremost, we're going to do the pedestal bearing, right? So we're going to click pedestal bearing, and that will be our working environment. The reason why is that essential, because if you don't do that, I don't know if future versions may have fixed this, but if you don't select your working environment when you start assembling or try to find parts, it will be hard. It will be much more harder to locate all the parts. So once you selected your working directory, we're going to click on new, and we're gonna click assembly, and you can name it whatever you want. I don't know what chapter in your school or course may have it, but in this case it's gonna be chapter 10. Right, underscore tutorial. Remember, do not leave spaces, because then it will not work. Okay, chapter 10 tutorial 1. We click OK. Once that's situated, the assembly part tutorial starts here. Okay, so everything is done and ready. You installed WinRAR, you extracted your folders, you create into a folder where you're gonna be working, right? And you selected your working directory to start putting together the assembly, right? Cool. So now what we're gonna do is, looking at this picture, go to my software here and show. So the first, let's look at it logically. What is the most essential part, or like the base of this whole model, will be here. This is the whole base, right? And then this falls on top of that base. Then this falls on top of the base. Then the screws down here comes up, which that will be the fourth, and then fifth, and then the sixth, the nut that falls on top of the screw. Okay, so essentially we're gonna assemble it as such. Look at it logically. Don't just start exporting in stuff and then try to put them together. Look at it logically, and it'll help you if you do it in that order. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's clear our screen and let's get started. So this looks just like our part environment, but with different different buttons. In the assemble button, we're just gonna click assemble. You could either click A, right, or just click here actually, right. Once you click assemble, for some particular reason it didn't open up in the folder, but go to the folder. Oh, it's actually right here, sorry. So once you click assemble, it will open up on your working directory. Click on preview to see what is it that you're importing, right. This is the part that I already created. So let's go through the list, and this is number 1. That's the base feature. So we're gonna go on ahead and click open. Once we do this, let's constrain the base model. So usually the base model, you constrain it by clicking on this coordinate, right? Click on this coordinate, right? And then zoom in and click on this other coordinate right here. And your base is fully constrained. That's the most simple way that I will know how to constrain your base model, where everything is going to fall on top of. Once that is situated, fully constrained, we click accept. Okay. Looking back, once we already have this, the second thing that we're going to import is this object here. So again, we click either on your keyboard, click A, or if that doesn't work, just click on assemble and look through your parts. So the other part will be your brass part. So we're going to click on it and click open. So as you can see, your part is not, it's not orientated the way the teacher, or it's not orientated the way you want it to. You have to put in constraints and put it together. Real simple. Before you start putting constraints, at least place the object as close as possible to add the constraints, and everything will work out. So what I do is I click on this axis, this arrow, which allows me to move the object from left to right. So I'll move it just like this. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Then I'll click on this arrow, the green arrow, to move it up, right? Again, it's not perfectly in line. It doesn't have to be perfectly in line, as close as possible, but don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. So once we put the object in this orientation, real simply, what we're gonna do, the first point of contact of this object is this little feature here in this hole. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on placement, and we're gonna click on select component, and we're gonna click on one of the faces. Let me show you so you can have a good spatial view. You could click on any surface, doesn't matter. Not at the axis, careful. Click on this on the surface. Okay. Actually, if you click on the axis, it will be much better. But let's click on the surface and go right ahead and click on one of the surfaces of the inside circle. Okay. Now it's constraint. What that means is that if this were to move down, it will be completely aligned to that face. But as you can see, the object is is still not orientated correctly. Do not worry, that was the first constraint to lock it. The second constraint, that should be put in place. You click on new constraint, and as you notice, we want this to turn around. So what we're going to do, we're going to click that this face of this object of this side is going to be touching on one part of this face. If you assemble it, it's going to be very close together, right? So you click on that face, and then the second part will be here, right? And it says normal. Normal means 90 degree. You're going to go ahead and click on coincident, right? So you would have thought that this would automatically lock in. What that does is fix the orientation so both faces are coincident, like both planes are right intersecting. So it's not saying that the faces are going to be touching, but initially both planes, because you could imagine this face as a plane, right? As its own plane, even though you don't see it, but that face is a plane in itself, and this face is a plane in itself. Plane. So when you click both of them and put a coincidence, you're saying both planes together. Okay. The last part is, let me see real quickly. Let's analyze this. So when this goes down, the second point of contact is this face with this face, right? Okay. See closely. I believe it's this face with this face. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna click a new constraint, right? We're gonna click on this face. When I mean this face, I mean this face. Either or, doesn't really matter. Click on this face. You want both faces to be touching. There you go. And it locked in perfectly. Okay. Once it's locked in perfectly and you see that, there's no overlapping, we already put our face to be the same plane, the whole inside surfaces to be on the same plane, and the underface of this to be touching the other part of the base. Everything's in line, we click OK. Okay. Start the orientation. Perfect, right? What will be the third feature? So we already placed the base, we placed the inside feature. Now we're gonna put this feature now. Again, we're gonna click here and let's look through the cap. This is what we're going to add. So we're gonna go ahead and click open. Same thing. Simple. Don't have to be perfect, but bring the object as close as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, bring it as close as possible. So when you're selecting constraints, you know, you could have a good visual view on what you're putting together, right? So let's see. Okay. So the most important thing is that, let's see real quick. Let me see real quick. Does it have an axis? The most important thing is that this circle here has an axis, right? So let's click on this axis. And you want both axes, the axis throughout this circle, to be in line, right? Because, you know, if you have to inject any liquid or any other tool, you want the screw to be in line so the screw could go through. So we're going to click on that axis. And this axis right here, it's hard to see. Let me zoom in for you guys. This circle right here has its own axis. Let me see. So right here, we're going to click on this other axis. If we look on placement, I click on the axis of this circle, and the axis that is going through this brass nut here, I put those two axes to be coincident on the same plane. Okay. Once we do that, right? You also I forgot to mention, if that was too hard to visualize, you could also have clicked this axis and this axis, and it will still work. You know, as long as both axes are in coincident, that you could put a screw in and it could go fully through with no obstruction. Okay, but at least we put these two axes in line. The next thing, you want these two faces to meet, right? But not to go further in. You know, you want it to stop at a specific point. So that's another point of coincidence. So you're going to click on this face. You're going to click on this face. See, click on this face. And we're going to click on coincident. Coincident means let those faces touch as close as possible. You don't want no gap in there. See, there's a perfect fit, right? Once the object is yellow, is a good indicator that is fully constrained. If it's not fully constrained, you cannot click on the check. It will not let you finish or finalize. Okay. Once that is done, you're gonna click OK. So far we're doing we're doing good. Hopefully you guys are still with me. The next thing, look at it logically. It's not something new. After we put this, you're not going to put the washers in because there's nothing holding in place the washers. First, we got to put these screws. Okay? So this is going to be our following parts that we're going to assemble. Again, we click Assemble, and let's look through the list. And this is what we're going to place in, right? You're going to click OK. Now, for this part, it doesn't really matter that you have to move it. Here, I won't really put any emphasis on moving it on from left to right. Not necessary. What we're going to do is, we want this face of the screw, if you notice, let me see, this face of the screw to be touching at this face, right? To not go any further in, but to those two planes to be in coincident. And you don't want the screw to go all the way through the model, then it look glitchy. So again, let's put constraints in. We're going to click on this component, just zoom in, click on this face, which is the bottom face of the screw, and you want this part right here, right? And if you notice, it will give you distance. Again, we're going to put coincident. And as you notice, both planes are in line, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip it. Okay. So both faces are on line. Now, one thing that you could do, the next thing that you're gonna do, you could either click on the face. Let me see. Sometimes this could be a little tricky. You could either click on the face, or you could go on ahead and click on the axis. Here you could click on the face. It really doesn't matter for this model, but in future models, probably in your workplace or when you're doing a project, sometimes the tolerance of both models coming together are very, very low. So you want them, sometimes the faces could be misaligned or could have a weird face. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna click on this axis, right, which is the axis of the circle, the center. And we're gonna click on this axis. And you want them to be coincident. So like that, they both are centered perfectly. And as you notice, it's yellow, it's fully constrained. And axis push the object in, and you could rest assured that this screw is not going further in than what it should, because initially we put the under face and the face of this block, right, to be coincident, so everything is locked in place. Once that's done, you click accept. You're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna import a second one for the other side. Same thing, keep it there, don't worry. What we're gonna do, click on your placement to see what's going on. Click on the under face, hold shift, move around, and click here, right? Once that is done, again, coincidence. You want both planes to be coincident, right? And we're gonna flip it. Now let's say, let me stop here for a moment. Let's say, that you're using your mouse and by mistake you click on the middle button and this occurred. And you're like, wow, I didn't finish constraining. All you have to do is click on the last part that you was assembling, right click on it, and click this option here. It will bring you back to this interface of putting constraints. Okay, so initially, again, we put the constraints, both faces to be in coincident. We're gonna do it again. We're gonna go placement. We're gonna add a new constraint. Let's rotate. We're gonna click on this axis and this axis, right? And we're gonna click coincident, and they are fully constrained. Perfect. Click accept. Let's have a standard orientation to see that our object is going perfectly well. So far, so good. The next part to add are the nuts. Okay. So look carefully. This is the locking nut, and this is the nut. So if I'm not mistaken, the locking nut will go last, and this will go in the middle. Okay. So you're gonna click open. Very simply, for this one, to help you with orientation, move it up. I just clicked on this axis, clicked on this axis. That's it. Okay. Again, we want both axes to be in line, right? So we're gonna click on placement, rotate it. Do what you have to do to have a better view. This could be kind of confusing at times. Let me see if this has an axis. Click on this axis, right? Zoom out and click on this axis, and you want them to be coincident. Okay, so now both axes are coincident to each other, so it's perfectly in line if I were to bring it down. But now again you see me repeating myself is to establish a good foundation understanding. We're gonna put a coincident on this face oh, sorry, on that face and this face right here. Reason why is we don't want the nut to go in completely in or partially in. We want it to sit perfectly. You don't want to eyeball it because you really can't see that. But the software is going to help us. So what we're going to do, we're going to click on this face, right? And we're going to click on the bottom face, right? Let's move it close together. We're going to click on coincident, right? And it would lock perfectly in. There's another scenario I'm going to show you. We're going to click assembly. We're going to do the same nut again. Move it up. Move it as close as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just to help your orientation. Alright. What we're going to do is click on your placement. Reason why I always click on placement because you want to see what's going on. So select your first component. You could either select this one first or this one first. Doesn't really matter. Well, actually, you actually have to click on the purple objects first. Oop. Okay, I did the wrong one. You're gonna rotate. We're gonna zoom in. We're gonna click on this axis, right? And we're gonna click on that axis, okay? Again, coincident. As we did before, we're gonna add a new constraint. We're gonna click on this face and this face. Okay. Now, in the previous one, it locked in perfectly on itself. But if you keep the nut this high up and you click coincident, oh, it actually worked. Well, last time I was doing it, it did not work. So if on the second coincident, if you first click on the face where you want the nut to stop and then click on the nut. If you click on the nut face and then you click on the base, it will stay floating up. It will not lock. For some reason, I do not know, but fortunately, it worked for us now. And we're gonna finalize that. Let's put this in standard orientation. So far, it's looking good. So now we're gonna add the last component, which will be the locking nut. So we're gonna click open. Put it as close as possible. Not as close as possible. Do not worry, it doesn't have to be perfect, but again, to help you with your spatial view. Again, when you're doing your first constraint, I've noticed that you cannot click on the other object. You first have to click on the purple object. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna constraint again, like always, the axis first. Once we do that, we're gonna click on coincident. Alright. Once we do that, new constraint, click on the face, the bottom face, rotate it around. In this face, you want them to be coincident, not distance, coincident. And there it goes. Perfectly locked in. Okay? And now we're gonna accept another assembly. Do the same process. I'm gonna move through this one fast, because I don't want to take much of your time either. Click on this axis. Click on this axis. Again, you want it to be coincident. There are. New constraint. This face. This face. And you want them to be coincident. And we have finished putting together the model. Now, we have achieved this part. We assembled the part completely, right? Perfect. But now your professor also, or your employer, or other project, you know, whatever you're doing a presentation, you want to showcase your model in an exploded view. This is the easiest part by far. So once this has been achieved, you put everything is constrained, everything is locked together. Our third step will be to give an exploded view, right? So we're going to click on Manage View. We're going to click on Explode. And we're going to click on New, right? And you can rename it whatever, you know, whatever you want to name it. By any chance, I would just keep it like this. And we're going to click OK, right? Let me see. Oh, once you do that, click Enter, right? Once you did that, with this exploded selected, as you see in the green arrow, you're going to click here and edit positions. So now we're going to go in reverse. Instead of just clicking on this and try to move everything, we're going to go in reverse and we're going to start moving things up little by little. Okay? So simply, you could go and you could go this route, do this by one, and then just do this one, then click on this one and move it up. The best way to do it is once you select this object, hold Control, your Control button in your keyboard, and click on just second object. So both objects are selected and they're going to move perfectly up in tangent, right? Do the same thing now. Click, hold Control, select your second nut so they can move in tangent together, right? Real easy. Second thing that you're gonna click is on this plate. You're gonna go on ahead and move it up. And you notice I'm clicking on the arrows, so like that it moves perfectly up in that specific axis with the constraints put in place. The next object that we're going to move, instead of the plate, we're going to move the screw. Oh, actually, I forgot to do this too. I'm going to click on this object and we're going to move it up. Okay. Move it up. Let's move this one up a little. Right. The next object we're going to move down is the screw. So we're going to click on this screw, hold Control. We're going to select this other screw and we're going to move it down. Let's move this a little up, just a little up. And there we go. We're gonna go on ahead and we're gonna accept our explosion. And there we go. We have fully have an exploded view of our object. To get rid of all these planes, let's just click on select all and we could have a better view. And let's click here, shading with edges so you can see every edge. Okay. Let me just show you one more thing. In case you want to put it back together, just click on this explode view. Oh wow. There we go. Ah, I forgot to save it. I forgot to show you guys that. I did a mistake. So once you did your explosion, so right now this is built. I would suggest you click another one and separate it. My mistake, guys. Separated parts. Because default explode is gonna move everything out of place. So I will suggest you, the first one is your default, which one you created, and then let me click on this one. What I forgot to do is save. You gotta click on save. So now this is saved. Now click on this part, edit position. I'm gonna go through it real quick. Sorry guys, sorry about that. I'm gonna move this up, move this up, move this up, move this up, and standard orientation. Perfect, right? So let's say we got to this point. and you like how everything is exploded, everything is well, gonna accept. Once you accept it, you gotta go on edit and click save. There you go. The reason why I also created two so that you could go back to your default, everything assembled together, and then everything separated. If you go by explode, everything is placed out of whack. Not bad, they did it pretty good. Not bad. But this is what the book wanted you to do. So again, I hope this tutorial has helped you understand how to use assemblies, how to put in place constraints. Again, the first part of the video show you how to export files, and hopefully this has helped you better understand Creo, its assembly features. And if you like, please leave a like. If you disliked it, leave a dislike. Leave a comment if you guys have any questions, if I could better give you better videos. Again, have a nice day. Hope this has helped you.